Well, joining me now is Hananya Naftali, the digital aide to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Welcome to Uncensored, Mr. Naftali. We were just talking to Mehdi Hassan there.
Thank you for having me.
He's concerned about something that's very much in your wheelhouse, about the influences, he puts it, from David Ellison, who's now running Paramount, the appointment of Barry Weiss now to run CBS News, and the purchase of her free press business and so on. Do you understand that concern? Have you had any conversations with David Ellison, with Barry Weiss, that could allay those concerns?
I didn't have any conversation with Barry Weiss in particular, but I listened to the interview and I have to say it almost sounds from listening to Mehdi Hassan that being pro-Israel is a curse. So, I would just like to make it very clear. I'm proud to be pro-Israel. I'm proud to be Zionist, and I think that there's nothing to be ashamed of that. Israel is actually at the forefront of fighting for the sake of Western civilization, and there's nothing to be ashamed of that. But on top of that, I have to say that the fact that Mehdi at least, raised serious concerns about one media outlet that's been relatively pro-Israel in, the way I see it, in a world full of anti-Israel mainstream media, that's actually a blessing to have, for once, an outlet that reports the facts.
What is your digital aid? What does that actually involve? What do you actually do?
Well, I've been working for Prime Minister Netanyahu for quite some time. I'm part of the digital team. That it's practically speaking, it's actually helping to manage the social media accounts and to basically be able to deliver the Prime Minister's messages out to the public. And I'm very proud to be able to do that. I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu is actually, he is going to be remembered as a Churchill, if you ask me, that saved not only Israel from radical Islam, but also Western civilization, because we are right now in a fight. And while everybody around the world is busy blaming Israel for the world's problems, we are actually facing a serious issue. You see radical Islam taking over the world. You saw that with the Manchester attack. You see this in the rise in anti-Semitism. And the question that I'm asking is, if their problem, Piers, is only with Israel, then why do we see rise in anti-Semitic attacks against Jewish people who do nothing but wanting to live and pray freely, without the need to fear for their lives? Piers, we are probably the one group in the world that is advised to hide our identity. When I travel and speak about Israel abroad, I'm advised to hide who I am. But of course, the way I see it, we have nothing to be ashamed of. But the sad part is that Israel is not allowed to win wars these days. I have to tell you, Thatcher saved Britain's economy from collapse. Churchill saved the world from fascism. And right now, Netanyahu is doing what every great leader does, saving its citizens, fighting to bring freedom and victory. But quite frankly, we're seeing right now that based on mainstream media outlet, we have to lose. We have to lose because we're Jewish. We have to lose because we're strong. And we have to lose because we refuse to back down.
Well, I don't think anybody. I take issue with that. I don't think anybody wants Israel to lose. I think what people have been increasingly concerned about, and I'm one of these people, is the scale of the response to October the 7th. Here we are 2 years later. The war aims were to defeat Hamas, which has not happened, were to have the hostages released. That hasn't happened either. Been no hostages released now for many, many months. And the war aims have not been achieved, but in the process, 75% of Gaza has now been completely destroyed. The functionality of Gaza has been pretty well reduced to nothing, with the hospitals, schools, everything being reduced to rubble. And that you've got over 60,000 people being killed. We don't know exactly how many are Hamas, but we do know that it's an estimated 20,000 plus children who've now been killed in this. And it's the scale of what's been going on, the total devastation strategy, which has really concerned the world and has made Israel's government increasingly a pariah government. And, as somebody who has always supported Israel, who absolutely defended Israel's right to defend itself. In fact, felt that Israel had a duty to do that after October the 7th. I'm very sad to see that so many people, you ask why are Jewish people feeling threatened and coming under attack? It's horrific. There's nothing worse than anti-Semitism. It's a disgusting thing, particularly given the history of the Holocaust and so on. But there are clearly people who are using what they see as the massively disproportionate response of the Israeli government to October the 7th as an excuse to persecute Jews. And I've said this for a while now, that it really concerns me that the longer this goes on in Gaza, the more unpopular the Israeli government makes Israel and the more dangerous it makes life for Jewish people. And, some people respond to me saying things like that by saying, well, you're an anti-Semite. Well, I'm not. I love Israel as a country. I love Israeli people. I know many of them. And I want Israeli people to live in prosperity and security. But I also want Palestinian people to enjoy the same liberties that Israeli people have. And I think we should better have these conversations without being branded anti-Semitic. I think it's a fatuous thing for people to say if you're not actually anti-Semitic. There are, as you know, enough anti-Semitic people out there to not include people who are not anti-Semitic. So that is where I think Israel's got itself.
Well, I have to join your remarks and actually say that as an Israeli, as a Jew, I love the Palestinian people. I don't wish for any human being to suffer, and actually it's very sad to see that the amount of suffering that Hamas brought to the people in Gaza. To think, I'm not saying that you're implying that, but, when people imply that we Israelis take joy and celebrate when we see Palestinians suffer, it's insane. Of course not. I don't celebrate when I see people suffer. But on the other hand, I do remember who danced in the streets and celebrated when Hamas butchered my people on the 7th of October. But I also have to say back to, in response to what you said, Israel is acting in accordance with international law, with the armed conflict law, with the Geneva Convention that actually says that the Genocide Convention that basically says that in order to carry out a genocide, you need to have an intent to destroy a group of people. And clearly, you know it, and I know it, that Israel has an incredible military capability. If Israel wanted, it could have erased Gaza in 2 days. And here we are, 2 years later, and you see that we're still at war. And it's because Israel is upholding the highest standards of human rights. We don't want to harm the Palestinian population. And as a matter of fact, when I served in the Israel Defense Forces, I was never taught to target civilians. And as a combat medic later on, I treated and I saved with my own hands an Israeli soldier in the Israel Defense Forces. I saved the lives of Palestinian people. So I want to use this opportunity and say that we don't hate the Palestinian people. Those that say, I hate someone just because they're Palestinian, they're in the wrong. And they don't represent the majority.
I certainly haven't accused you of that. I mean, my question for you would be, are you a journalist now? Do you consider yourself a journalist?
Well, I do Israel activism on social media, and I think that it's very important to have a conversation with the other side. But I have
the reason I'm asking about journalism is, a lot of Israeli guests come on and they say we are the most moral army in the world. Everything we do is incredibly ethical. There's nothing we're doing which could remotely constitute war crimes and so on. To which my response as a journalist is, if that is the case, why is there an ongoing ban against international journalists going into Gaza? Because every war correspondent I know is desperate to get in there to verify the Israeli claims, right? And if it turns out that everything the Israeli government has been saying about what it's been doing is true, then fine. But there seems to be a growing suspicion that the reason why Prime Minister Netanyahu continues to ban international journalists is because he's doing stuff he doesn't want the world to see.
Well, I think that first of all, I heard the Prime Minister Netanyahu saying on an interview that journalists should be able to enter into the Gaza Strip and report, but we have to keep in mind that it is an active war zone. and you have to make sure that you are safe. We want to keep the lives of journalists.
He's not doing it out of the safety of the journalists. Let's try and have a grown-up conversation. Netanyahu's decision to ban international journalists has got nothing to do with him being worried about the safety of journalists. If he was concerned about the safety of journalists and their well-being, then over 200 Palestinian journalists would not have been killed so far in this war, which is a record number for any conflict of modern times. So I think this argument that's put up, with all due respect, that it's for the health and safety concerns for the journalists is nonsense. I think that it would be incumbent on Israel right now to actually let journalists in to do their job and to verify either way whether what the Israeli government has been saying about what it's been doing in Gaza is true or not. And the longer that ban remains in place, the more the presumption will be, and I completely understand this presumption, will be that we are not being told the truth and there is a reason for this ban continuing.
Well, I have to say on that note, what I know, which is there was an instruction to allow journalists in, and I don't know what the Israeli army is doing in that regard. But I have to say that I think that journalists should be allowed to go in, but at the same time we have to make sure that they are being safe, because you're entering an active war zone, and Gaza is a very
they know how to
densely
operate.
populated area.
Again, look, with all due respect, Hananya, I know lots of war correspondents from CNN, from BBC, from Reuters. I've employed many of them when I ran newspapers. They do their own risk assessment.
Yeah.
Their networks do their own risk assessment. Their employers do. That's what they do all the time. They're operating in war zones all the time. You know, half of them have just been in Ukraine. You know, this is not something they're not newbies to this business. This is just an unprecedented situation where for 2 years of a war, they have been literally prevented from doing their job on the ground because the controlling party here, the Israeli government, has issued a ban. And we all know that. So I just find it extraordinary that this ban goes on and the Israeli government doesn't understand. The longer it goes on, the more suspicious it gets.
Well, I have to say on that note, obviously, we also know who else is in Gaza. We have 48 hostages, and to me, it's just insane that you have Hamas, a terror organization that holds the bodies of hostages, dead hostages, that are in the Gaza Strip.
I agree.
And they won't even let them come home. But, you know, Piers, I have to say on that note, I just saw a few days ago an image that just, I just have to share this with you. I saw an image of Abigail Idan. She was kidnapped when she was 3 years old. Hamas kidnapped her on the 7th of October. And there was a picture of her carrying her school bag and heading to school after being returned to Israel. So I think that this is the true victory that we see, that life in Israel goes on and we are not going anywhere. And I think that, you know, in regards to this whole peace plan and the efforts being made to bring our hostages back and put an end to this war, because we all know, and I think you would agree with me as well, that we have to end this war as soon as possible. And you know, the sooner the better, all while remembering that we must bring the hostages as soon as possible. Every day that they're there is a day in a living hell. And as we're speaking right now, there are still hostages in the dungeons of Hamas suffering simply because they're Jewish.
Yeah, listen, you won't get any disagreement from me about the hostages. It's a disgusting, ongoing war crime that these hostages are being kept by Hamas.
Thank you for acknowledging that.
Hamas, well, I've acknowledged it every day I've covered the story. Hamas are a despicable terrorist organisation. The snatching of hostages was disgusting. The murder of 1,200 people was disgusting. The wounding of nearly 7,000 more was disgusting. Everything about that attack 2 years ago was disgusting. With regard to the peace deal that you just referenced, you know, a lot of people... clearly a lot of momentum now trying to make this happen. A lot of people believe the catalyst for the real momentum came with a furious denunciation by President Trump of Prime Minister Netanyahu about the attack by Israeli forces on Doha, on Hamas negotiators, that was done without prior agreement from the United States. Doha obviously has a huge American military base there, the biggest in the Middle East for American forces. And the moment that happened, I was like, what the hell is Israel doing? Why on earth would it, attack in Doha, knowing how inflammatory that would be to the whole Middle East and to all the rulers of all the Middle East countries, as it has been. It would enrage President Trump, who's a close friend of the Emir of Qatar. I know that because I saw them together in Doha at the state dinner earlier this year. And I couldn't understand anything about this. None of it made sense. And we now understand that Prime Minister Netanyahu apologised to the Prime Minister of Qatar for what happened. Donald Trump has now given security guarantees to Qatar that if this happens again, the United States will get involved in defending Qatar's interests. It seemed to me a calamitously bad decision, and it failed. You know, no Hamas commanders were killed. A Qatari security guy was killed. Other people totally unconnected were killed. I mean, do you concede now that this whole thing was a complete fiasco and should never have happened?
Do I need to remind our viewers on the 7th of October how we saw the leaders of Hamas that, by the way, enjoyed their lavish
No, you don't need to remind anyone of that.
I've
just said it was everything that happened on October the 7th was disgusting. But how do you defend attacking in Doha a group of people who are literally sitting down to negotiate a peace plan? What message does that send to the world about Israel's commitment to actually wanting peace? I didn't understand it then. I don't understand it now. We've now got an apology from your Prime Minister, your boss. Fine, but why did he do it?
Well, first of all, I have to say it's totally okay to have different opinions. But I have to say, in my opinion, Hamas cannot be trusted to have peace. It needs to be enforced on Hamas, because we all know very well what the Hamas charter says. They will never tolerate an Israeli state next to them. They don't want a state next to Israel. They don't want anything that has the word Israel or Jew in it. So their charter says it very clearly that they wish to destroy Israel and build an Islamist state on top of that. So, quite frankly, we're not happy about those wishes, as you would as well, or any Briton that would hear something like that. If you had a neighbor that said, hey, I wish to kick you out of your home and actually kill everybody and build an Islamic state on top of that. So, quite frankly, we're not going to let that happen. So Israel has every right to do what it has to do in order to safeguard our future. And look, some people are not going to like what Israel is doing. That's okay. You know, I have to say that, and that's not directed to you, but the people that stayed silent when we were under attack and, you know, then later all of a sudden woke up when we are defending ourselves. So I advise them to keep and be silent when we do what is necessary to bring our hostages back. And trust me, the way I see it, Israel is doing everything in its power to bring the hostages back. And until now, Prime Minister Netanyahu was able to bring, if I'm not wrong, about 207 hostages back, living and dead. You know, we can't forget the Bibas family, for example, that were just brutally massacred and later returned home. So at the end of the day, we in Israel are dealing, the Middle East is a tough neighborhood. You make peace through strength, not through stupid concessions. We have tried that. In 2005, Israel withdrew completely from the Gaza Strip, hoping to get peace. Did we get peace in return? Of course not. We got rockets. We got all kinds of terror attacks, tunnels. I wish for the Palestinian people to finally have a leadership that cares about them more than their own pockets in the bank accounts, or about this sick ideology to destroy another nation. Because at the end of the day, we Israelis have offered the Palestinians peace multiple times. And I have to say, again, as an Israeli, I don't hate Palestinians. We can have disagreements, but at the end of the day, we need to acknowledge that Israel is a fact and it's here to stay. And at the same time, I say the Palestinians are also they're living, and I'm against kicking Palestinians from their homes.
Okay, final question. I've interviewed Prime Minister Netanyahu 3 times before, including a few months before October the 7th. He's declined every single request we've made since, which has been, I think, pretty much every week for the last 2 years. Maybe you could put a good word in for us and see if the Prime Minister would come on uncensored again and answer some tough questions. Because I think it's time that he and I had a chat.
Well, it's not something that I heard about, but I would definitely love to forward your request to the team. But at the end of the day, I think that there are a lot of people that bash Israel constantly without really any evidence. So I think that it's really great to have an actual conversation and to be allowed to speak our minds as well and speak my mind. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate you coming on Uncensored. Hananya Naftali, making your debut on the show. Thank you very much.
It's 2025. America's debt is over $37 trillion, and the dollar just had its worst crash since 1973. That puts your savings and your family's future at risk. That's why we trust Alpha Omega Gold, a company that stands unapologetically with Israel and supports Stand Tall Israel. Visit ao.gold/stand to claim your free precious metals wayfinder guide or call 1-855-426-4653 today. Protect your future before it's too late.